these are completely secret powers. It's a system of secret surveillance, even though the vast majority of people will have done nothing wrong. The only way to even contemplate a system of surveillance like this is to do it with AI and algorithmic surveillance, which means, frankly, this has all of the ingredients of a Horizon scandal on steroids.
Yeah. Government is facing a backlash over plans to snoop on the bank accounts of people who claim benefits. The Work and Pensions Department wants to make banks monitor the finances of benefit recipients as part of a plan to reduce the £8 billion lost annually through fraud and error. Well, Silkie Carlo is director at Big Brother Watch. Hello to you, Silkie.
Hello, good evening.
Hi. Silkie, these new powers, just tell us a bit about them. They are remarkably intrusive, aren't they?
Incredibly intrusive. And in fact, although they're clearly targeted to attempt to criminalise people in the welfare system, which is about 40% of the population when you take into account state pension, child tax credit, etc., it affects every single one of us, because the powers that the government is trying to smuggle in at the moment in Parliament is to force banks to monitor all accounts according to secret criteria. And the purpose is related to welfare fraud and error. But there is no suspicion threshold. And in fact, the government has been explicit that these powers are designed precisely for where there is no suspicion. Of course, all of us want fraud to be dealt with where it affects public money, of course. And the government already has powers to do that where there is suspicion that fraud is happening. But this is far broader than that. And of course, it affects, they're also saying that the purpose is to look for errors. Never before have we had the government proposing a system of mass surveillance for administrative reasons, potentially dealing with its own errors, but making the public pay the price with our financial privacy.
How would it work, Silkie? Would the banks then be under an obligation on the basis of any suspicion to pry into someone's bank account and then report it immediately to the department, act like investigators and agents on behalf of the government?
That's right. And something that came out in expert legal opinion that we commissioned, that was published with the Times today, is that this is quite unprecedented, that the government is passing a law that effectively forces other organisations, and initially it will be banks, to act as arms of the surveillance state, where they will be obliged to conduct at great expense and inconvenience mass surveillance of millions of people who are their customers, which also creates legal liabilities for them as well.
Yes.
They then will have to hand over potentially unlimited amounts of data. There's nothing in the proposed powers that limits the data about individuals to the Department for Work and Pensions.
Would they have to notify the account holder that they're doing this?
No. These are completely secret powers. It's a system of secret surveillance, even though the vast majority of people will have done nothing wrong. The only way to even contemplate a system of surveillance like this is to do it with AI and algorithmic surveillance, which means, frankly, this has all of the ingredients of a Horizon scandal on steroids.
Yes.
People will be accused of being criminals by machines. And in this case, the consequences are really severe, because it will inevitably, some of the errors will be people who aren't claiming benefits whatsoever. But if this does affect people who are claiming benefits, who might be disabled or suffering from cancer, or whatever it might be, and they have their benefits suspended, or they're then subject to further investigations, we're not talking about small business owners. We're talking about people who are on the poverty line, who could pay the price for these errors with their well-being, or potentially worse.
And obviously you can learn a great deal about someone's private life by looking at their bank account. But look, clearly fraud and error is a significant problem, and it's right to try to tackle it. What would be, in your view, a fairer way of doing that, using people's bank details?
Well, already people who claim benefits have to show limited information about they have to show what information the DWP requires, which can include bank transactions and bank balances, of course, in the course of applying for a benefit. And then periodically they can be subject to review. And where there is suspicion that someone's committing fraud, then of course they have to hand over private information also. And I think generally making the DWP work better and making the whole bureaucracy of the system work better is something that people in the system and outside of the system have been asking for a long time. But to wrap up the whole population in a mass surveillance system is not going to make administrating benefits any easier. It's going to make it much, much harder. There's going to be a huge amount of noise in that in that data, and
There it is.
serious errors.
Indeed. A fascinating argument, maybe under discussed at this point. Silkie Carlo at Big Brother Watch, thank you. I wanted to give you this statement from the Work and Pensions Department, who say that Big Brother Watches, I'm quoting, claims that DWP will use the measures to reveal information about people's movements and opinions and medical information are entirely false. The government remains committed to these powers as a method of reducing fraud and error in the benefit system, which will save the taxpayer $600 million over the next 5 years. And the DWP goes on, the measures will require third parties to provide only limited relevant information that may signal whether benefits are being improperly paid. It does not give DWP access to anyone's bank account or see how claimants are spending their money. That from the DWP.